from Now You See Her by James Patterson, starting at chapter 53. You had your good days, Peter Fournier thought from his low-level seat in the unbelievably opulent and immense new Yankee Stadium. And then you had your perfect days. Here we go, Boston, here we go, he yelled as loud as he could as Beckett retook the mound. From the famous facade to the flat-screen TVs at every turn, to the low, bowl-like design that made it seem like you were watching the game from the batting circle, even a die-hard Sox fan like him couldn't deny the billion-dollar ballpark was baseball's version of paradise on earth, even after they dug up Ortiz's jersey. But to be here in the 8th inning, the Sox up by 3, and Beckett still on the mound in a perfect game, was nothing short of miraculous. Actually, the true topper was having his family there, his gorgeous wife, Vicky, and his 2 sons, 9-year-old twins, Michael and Scott, with him. As on all their trips to Disney and last year's incredible European jaunt, Team Fournier was having an unforgettable blast. The Fournier family had been invited to the game by Tom Riley and Ed O'Connor, 2 New York FBI agents Peter had met at the FBI's National Academy course 2 years before. He'd actually had them and their families down for a Boston, New York spring training game in Fort Myers, and now it was payback. The 2 big bear-like feds sat on either side of the Fourniers with their Yankee fan families. There was a lot of razzing back and forth, but it was all in good, clean fun. Funny the places life took you, Peter thought, smiling as he shook his head at his twin sons. The second oldest in a destitute family of 10 in a South Boston project, Peter had abhorred the idea of ever having a kid. To be clear, he liked being married just fine. After all, there was nothing more satisfying or fun or clean than having a faithful, monogamous woman in his life. But by age 50 and now on his 3rd wife, Peter had had the epiphany that he'd actually acquired enough money to completely buffer himself from all the smelly human unpleasantness of child rearing with a huge house, nannies, and prep schools. It had worked out even better than planned. He'd never smelled a diaper, let alone change one, and it was up to him which meaningless ball games or Christmas plays he would attend. All he needed to concentrate on now was creating as many unforgettable, fun, heartwarming moments as were convenient, so his family would give him his space. Like tonight's doozy, being daddy was easy. Beckett started off the 8th with a 4-seamer on the black that Jeter just gaped at. Peter squeezed Vicky's hand as their usually sedate son, Michael, jumped out of his seat with excitement, delivering high fives. Beckett went up 0-2 as Jeter swung and missed a breaking ball. Peter looked down at Beckett with spine-tingling reverence. What a warrior. Baseball immortality was now within his grasp, and not even 50,000 screaming New Yorkers could take it away. One more. Come on, Josh. One more, baby. Please, Peter prayed. Beckett threw another off-speed pitch down and away, and Jeter swung and got under it. Uke went all out from first, but it bounced off the top of the Yankee dugout into the crowd. Damn, just missed, Peter thought. But at least it was just a foul ball. A beautiful teenage girl's face filled the jumbotron in center field a moment later. She was holding the ball and hopping up and down like she just won the lottery. There was something familiar about the girl, Peter thought, squinting at the 6-story tall high-def screen. Something in her smile reminded him of his dearly departed mom's high school yearbook picture. Peter had loved that picture and his mom, despite her inability to keep her legs closed. Peter watched riveted as they replayed the girl's one-handed grab. They even froze the frame. Then his Heineken fell straight down out of his hand, splattering his ankles. Because the good-looking blonde woman embracing the teen girl reminded him even more of someone else. His dead wife, Janine. Chapter 54. "Can I borrow those, son?" Peter said calmly, despite his galloping heart. "Sure, Dad," Scott said, immediately handing over the binoculars that one of the feds had brought. Raising the glasses, Peter ignored the thunderous cheer that rose up as Jeter hit a liner into the gap, ruining Beckett's perfect game. He slowly searched into the crowd behind the Yankee dugout where the foul ball had landed. He panned over people in suits, Billy Crystal, a bunch of pudgy Yankee fan goons pointing at a little black girl in a Boston cap, the new and improved Rudy without the comb-over. He scanned up and down the rows and sections one by one, methodically, looked through the crowded aisles. He didn't spot her. Even after 5 meticulous minutes, there were too many people, too many faces, none of them was Janine. The woman had only looked like her, and he jumped to conclusions, he decided, as he handed back the binoculars to his son. It made sense. He'd been thinking more and more about Janine over the last year for some inexplicable reason. He even dreamed about her a few times. In one of the dreams, he was eating dinner with her, again by the seawall in their backyard, like on their first date. In another, he had his hands around her throat, holding her down under the water on an empty beach as she tried to scratch at him. All in his head. When he lowered the binoculars, he saw that A-Rod was on first and Beckett was heading for the showers. "Now that just sucks," his son Scott yelled. Tom Riley, the fed beside them, began to do a little victory dance as he giggled uncontrollably. "You know what's even funnier, Tom?" Peter felt like asking his FBI pal. "The way you let me pump you for information about any large upcoming federal drug interdictions. You know what I do with that information and the other information I casually collect from all your asshole buddies at the DEA, Tom? I sell it to the cartels. Have you heard of air traffic controllers? Yeah, I'm like a drug traffic controller. Beckett might have just blown a perfect game, but I made 7 figures last year, Tommy boy, tax-free. Not bad for a hick Florida cop. Tee. Peter scruffed his tan son's blonde head with a grin. "Don't worry, it's not the end of the world, Scott," he said. "A man takes disappointment in stride. And what did I tell you about using the S word?" "Sorry, Dad," Scott said sheepishly. "I meant to say stinks." "There you go," Peter said, patting his son gently on his shoulder as he gave Riley a wink. "Much more appropriate. Always remember, the words we choose reveal our true character." And then I'm skipping to chapter 61. As I did with each of my long shot plans, I arranged my newest one with gusto. By the next morning, I'd managed to nail down everything. The flight to Key West, the hotel, the car to the airport. Emma was happily surprised to find out she'd be spending the next week at her best friend Gabby's townhouse in Brooklyn. The only thing left to do is swing by my office on the way to Kennedy to pick up Harris's case file, which Marianne had messengered over. Then all I had to do was try not to get killed by Peter, as I saved a man from execution. In a week's time. Piece of cake, I mumbled as I rolled my bag into the kitchen. Em was listening to her iPod and drumming a pencil against her open trig book in front of a bowl of Cap'n Crunch. I stole a spoonful as I emailed Harris's lawyer, a man named Charles Baylor, to tell him I was coming down. I winced when I turned on the kitchen laptop and opened Internet Explorer. In history, I found searches for Bloom family and even County Wicklow, the place I'd said Emma's fictional dad was from. Great. Another headache. What timing? As if my inbox weren't currently full of disaster. The tape I'd made before Emma's party had only whetted her appetite for more, I realized. More juggling. I was getting it from all sides at once. Leave my secret identity alone, I felt like yelling. Mom, I've been meaning to ask you, Emma said, taking back the spoon. Why don't I look more like my dad? That was one of my biggest worries, that Emma might notice that Aiden Beck was fair instead of black Irish like Peter. I have no idea, I said cheerfully, making it up as I went along. I do know you have his good nature and his laugh. Emma, no dummy, frowned at my utter bullshit. Why do I get the feeling that you don't want me to find out about him, she said. I had to struggle to keep from pulling my hair out. Do I give you that impression, I said. What of, Emma mumbled, fat tears suddenly springing into her big blue eyes. I knew that Em was just being a 16-year-old girl, a ball of hormone-charged emotion. But I couldn't let her do this. I couldn't afford it, and neither could she. What the heck was I supposed to say? Sorry to have to tell you this, kid, but your dad's a psychopathic killer, and I'm a pathological liar. Instead, I used my secret weapon. I dropped my keys loudly on the countertop, collapsed onto the island stool, and started crying myself. I wish I could make your life make more sense, but I can't, I said, sobbing. I'm sorry, Mom, Em finally said, coming around to embrace me. You don't think I know what you've done for me, but I really do. I'll stop freaking out with all this stuff. No, I'm sorry. You could look up your Irish roots, just not right now, okay? You have college prep and so many other things on your plate. When I get back, we'll rent The Quiet Man and eat Lucky Charms for breakfast. I hear they're magically delicious. My iPhone rang as Emma hugged me again. It was a number I didn't recognize. Terrific. What now? Hello? Hi, this is Carl Fohe from Exonerate, New York. Is this Nina Bloom? Yes, Carl, what's up? Since you've got the Justin Harris case now, I thought it would be a good idea for you to meet Harris's mother. Marianne must have called him, I surmised. No backsies indeed. What's your schedule looking like? Real tight, Carl. I'm actually on the 10 o'clock flight to Florida, I said. Could you come by Rockefeller Center before you leave? Justin's case is making big news now. The Today Show is doing a piece on it this morning. We're actually out here right now protesting, trying to get some national publicity. The Today Show? Publicity? That would really help my fly below the radar strategy. A fist-sized ball of fear suddenly clenched in my stomach. I knew I shouldn't have done this. Taking this case on had been a mistake. Nina, you still there? I know it's a crunch, but I feel it's really imperative that you meet. I couldn't think of an excuse. I'd have to figure it out. If I was asked to get anywhere near a camera, I'd just refuse and walk away. Run away if it came to that. Okay, I guess, I said, checking my watch, but only for a minute. Give me half an hour. Chapter 62. And 4, 3, 2, said some wimpy bald guy, all in black and wearing a headset. He pointed at the massive high-tech television studio camera beside him as its red light came on. And we're back, Al Roker said, reading off the teleprompter screen mounted beneath the saucer-sized bluish lens of the camera. We're concluding our 3-part series today on Florida's jump killer execution by talking to a family member of one of the alleged victims. Sitting on the couch across from America's weatherman, wearing jeans and a light blue cashmere sweater, Peter Fournier smiled. Behind him, outside the Rockefeller Plaza studio window, a crowd of people were waving signs. This was the reason Peter had traveled up from Key West to New York for the weekend. Peter Fournier's wife was only 23 years old, Roker continued, when she was believed to have crossed paths with Justin Harris. Mr. Fournier, a Key West, Florida police officer, is the head of the victims' rights group for the jump killer's victims. Good morning, Mr. Fournier. Has Harris actually admitted to murdering your young wife, Janine? No, Peter said sadly. He has not, Al. He maintains his innocence, not only in the case of my wife's death, but even of the foster girl for which he was convicted. Peter took a breath as the glossy eye of the camera stayed on him. That's why I, and all the other families, are gratified that the execution is finally going to take place next week. This man needs to pay for his crimes, and on Friday night, God willing, that's exactly what he'll do. Al nodded. I can't imagine your pain, but it's long been debated whether capital punishment actually helps the victim's family. What's your take on that? 17 years ago, this person abducted my wife and killed her, and he doesn't even have the semblance of humanity to tell me where he dumped her body so I can have a proper funeral, Peter said calmly. What do I do with that, Al? Forgive and forget. My pain and the pain of all of the victims' families will never go away. Dante said that hell is the place where all forgotten things go. That's exactly where I want to put Harris. I just want him to be forgotten by me, by the other families, and by every other human being on this planet. What are your plans now? Al wanted to know. I and the other family members in our organization have learned that death penalty opponents are scheduling protests, so we will be front row center to make sure that our voice and the voices of the people that Harris truly disenfranchised are heard. Thank you, Mr. Fournier. I wish you well, sir, Al said. Up next is Meredith with some money-saving travel tips. Chapter 63. My airport car let me out in front of Rockefeller Center on the corner of 5th and 50th and kept going. I'd asked the driver to go ahead to my Lexington Avenue office building to pick up the Harris case file and wait for me there. After my aggravating meet and greet with Harris's mom, I would hustle over to my office and, by some miracle, make my flight. I spotted Fohi standing in the crowd in front of the 10 Rock Center window where they taped the Today Show. Beside him, a large black woman wearing a "Yes, we did" ball cap was holding a large handwritten sign. Free Justin Harris. Don't kill my son. Mrs. Harris. Hi, I'm Nina Bloom, I said, coming to the crowd. Mrs. Harris almost knocked me down as she barreled into me. Wrapping her arms around me in a full embrace, she pressed her smiling face against my cheek. She seemed enthusiastic, strangely upbeat despite her son's predicament. Oh, she's a good one, I can feel it, Mr. Fahey, she said in a honey-smooth southern accent, her soft brown eyes staring hard into mine. You're going to save my Justin. I'm going to, try, I said, eyeing Fahey for help. Try won't do, Ms. Bloom, Mrs. Harris said, rapidly shaking her head at me. Try won't do. You are going to do it, and that's an end to it. It's going to end with you. There's no other choice. She released me and rummaged through the brimming Duane Reade bag beside her and showed me a picture. It was of a teenage Justin in a drum major high school uniform. There was another one of him on a stage playing with the rest of an all-black marching band. That was at Carnegie Hall for a Wynton Marsalis tribute. She laughed as she stared at the photo. All them lessons and practicing. The neighbors used to call the police twice a month. That was the proudest moment of my life. Then she placed something cold and metal into my hand. At first I thought it was a coin, but it was a military medal, a bronze octagon with a green, white, and blue ribbon. Justin earned this medal when he responded to a helicopter accident during his Ranger training. Last time I checked, serial killers don't go around pulling bodies from burning wreckage. You know, I used to believe in the system, that the truth would come out, but every day it just got worse. I wish I knew the words to express how wrong this is, the legal terms and such. You're going to have to do it for me, Ms. Bloom. Mrs. Harris let out her breath, trying to keep herself composed. That's why I needed to meet you, to try to make you feel what I know, so you can know Justin just like I know Justin. He didn't do it. Justin isn't a monster. It's all lies, all of it. Justin was my best child, my nicest boy. His brother was the mean one. His brother would tussle with him, but Justin would never strike him back. He's incapable of hurting anyone. Ms. Bloom is going to do everything she can, Mrs. Harris. Now she really has a plane to catch, Carl Fahey said gently. Wait, please, Mrs. Harris said, without taking her eyes off me. Do you have a child, Ms. Bloom? A daughter, I said. What's her name? She said with a smile. Emma, I said, smiling back. What would you do if people had Emma and were about to kill her? Everything I could, I answered immediately. Mrs. Harris let out a loud breath. Good, she said. She nodded. Justin is in good hands. My prayers have been answered. My baby is safe now. I tried to hand back Justin's medal. Mrs. Harris shook her head. No, you hold on to that, she said as a tear, a single tear, slid over the soft brown curve of her cheek. Don't lose it now. I stared at the medal, then at Fahey. I could see why he'd wanted me to come. The son of a bitch wanted me motivated, emotionally involved, not just going through the motions. He wanted me to see that Mrs. Harris was flesh and blood, a good, warm person, and a desperate, loving mother who would do anything not to lose her child. Mission accomplished, I thought, my own eyes wet as I walked away. Chapter 64. It was 5 to 9 when Peter Fournier walked out the tunnel-like NBC studio exit onto West 50th Street beside Rockefeller Center. Baby, you did so good, his wife Vicky cooed when he opened his ringing cell phone. I still can't believe it. It's like I'm dreaming. You having a chat with Al Roker like he's your best buddy. I would have passed out. Let me put the boys on. Dad, you rock, Scott said. Yes, that's right. My dad is Mr. Cool, Mike yelled in the background. Thanks, guys. I love you too. I'll tell you all about it when I get back to the hotel, Peter said. Peter smiled as he closed his cell. He had done well. He thought he might be nervous about going on live national TV, but once the red camera light came on, he'd felt perfectly fine, like himself, calm, in charge. He'd always suspected that he'd be good on TV. Now he knew. In another life, he could have been an actor, a talk show host. He had the looks, the charm. Was it narcissistic if you knew you actually were the biggest swinging dick in the room, he wondered? Any room? Every room? Flying under the radar was his usual game plan, but in this case he'd taken a calculated risk because there was business involved. One of the victim's group members, Artie Tivoli, was an elderly, multi-millionaire hotel chain owner from Palm Beach. After befriending the silver-haired gent with bottomless pockets, Peter had persuaded him to take a serious look at bidding on Key West's only rundown golf course and turning it into a massive luxury resort. For the last year, he'd been working with Artie's company, the Tivoli Group, introducing them around to the right city council and zoning board members. If all went as planned, Peter's slice of the proceedings would be massive, a 7-figure windfall. It would be the most money he'd ever made in his life. Well, at least legally. So, in actuality, his Today Show appearance had exactly squat to do with his desire to steal Matt Lauer's job, or to mourn his dearly departed other half, Janine. His victim group activism and nationally televised righteous indignation at Justin Harris were all for Artie, who had lost his only daughter to the jump killer in 1991. Peter, still jazzed, looked out at Midtown Manhattan's swirling chaos of delivery trucks backing up and double-parked taxis honking. It was morning rush now, and rock concert-sized crowds of business people and hard hats hustled past him up and down the cavernous side street. What absolute suckers, he thought. Get to work, you ballless serfs. Step to it. Though his cell phone camera stank, he decided to take some pictures with it anyway to show the kids. He snapped a shot of the famous television studio's door, a passing mounted cop, a bike messenger across the street smoking a cigarette. He was about to take a shot of a pigeon pecking at a donut in the gutter when a blonde woman flashed out from the east corner of the building by Rockefeller Center. There was something so New York about the tall head-turner. Her creamy thigh, her get-the-fuck-out-of-my-way pace, her just-so salon-colored platinum hair. Then she turned to her right to check the approaching traffic, and Peter's serene smile faded as he lowered the phone. All he could do was watch in silence as his dead wife, Janine, stepped across the street. Chapter 65. Damn it, I said, checking the time on my iPhone as I cornered onto 5th Avenue. I needed to be on my way to the airport already. My driver, waiting at my office, was going to have to floor it and maybe eat some red lights on our way to JFK if I was going to make my flight. I thought about calling and having him come back around onto 5th to pick me up, but then I decided against it. Midtown morning rush hour was so insanely gridlocked and unpredictable, it was actually quicker for me to go to him on foot. I was picking up the pace crossing to the east side of the street when my iPhone jingled its incoming text alert. I glanced at the screen, fearing another delay, but then let out a breath when I saw that the message was from Em. Who else? I could almost see her there on her early free period in the Burley Library, illegally texting. Her books open in front of her phone under the table. I thumbed the view button on the touchscreen. Wilson, her text read. Despite my full-blown hurry, I smiled. Then I laughed out loud. It was a reference to the stupidest and our hands-down favorite part of the movie Castaway, in which Tom Hanks, a plane crash survivor, nonsensically befriends a Wilson volleyball. It was also our way of saying hi. All day long, Em and I texted each other silly inside jokes like that. There was another jingle as another text came in. Worst 80s band? Em wanted to know. REO Speedwagon? Since I'd actually been there, I had to disagree. Close, I texted back as I walked. It was a glacial process for someone over the age of 16. Culture Club, their hit song was Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? The answer was yes. Google Boy George if you don't believe me. Fine, Em texted back in a finger snap. Movie quote throwdown. Toy Story, that's not flying, that's falling with style. What does a space ranger actually do? I texted her back pretty quickly this time. Em would be proud. Then I pocketed my phone as a sudden lump caught in my throat. After a moment, I started crying. As I walked, I started sobbing uncontrollably, right there in front of Fifth Avenue's tourist shops and luggage stores and overpriced pizzerias. Because I suddenly realized Em actually wouldn't be proud of me. What would Em think of me when everything came out, I wondered, snorting into the lapel of my faux Burberry coat. When she found out that I'd been lying to her ever since she could walk, that I was an imposter, that someone had died because of me. Who was I kidding her? The idea that I could exonerate Harris in a week while keeping the house of cards that was my life from quickly becoming a game of 52 pickup was a tall order, even for someone with my extensive creative skills. I dodged a bullet at Rockefeller Center, but it was just the beginning, I knew. The deeper I went into this, the more I would be at risk. What the hell was I doing? I had one mother of a skeleton in my closet, and here I was about to put the key in the lock and turn. My phone text jingled again. There is a snake in my boots, Em had typed. There is a snake in your family, I thought, shaking my head at the phone. Chapter 66. Peter moved smoothly with the morning rush hour crowd on Fifth Avenue, a half block behind Janine. He couldn't decide what surprised him more, the fact that Janine was actually alive, or how incredible she still looked. She was, what now, 40? Yet look at her, stylish, confident, model-thin, regal. Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Despite the fact that he'd only glanced at her, Peter knew it was her. Didn't have the slightest doubt. He knew now that he'd seen her at the Yankees game as well. The unlikeliness of coincidences didn't matter to him. He paid close attention to things and made it a point to remember everything and everyone, especially faces. The way he operated, you forgot a face at the peril of your life. He was 50, yet his senses and instincts were as sharp as ever. Bravo, Janine, he thought as he trailed her. Not too many people walking around on this earth could brag about putting one over on Peter Fournier. In fact, Janine, Peter reflected, besides you, there's nobody at all. He ran to catch up as she turned the next left around a corner. Dead-ending the shadowed side street 2 blocks to the east was a massive, dirty old building, Grand Central Terminal. He and his family had visited it on their first day up here. Tunnels, he thought. Darkness, speeding trains, crowds. A place where accidents happened. Or random acts of violence. He had his small police backup Glock in his ankle holster, but since the station was crawling with anti-terror cops, there was no way he could use it. That left the illegal spring-loaded blackjack he kept snug in the small of his back ever since his days on the Boston PD, or his belt-buckle knife. The knife, then. He could have it out and in and back as quick as a coin trick, open the femoral in her leg and keep going. He began to visualize it. Don't even make eye contact. Flank her, stab, and saw. He relished what he had to do now about as much as a carpenter relished using a hammer to hit a nail. There was no glee. There was just brutal necessity, covering his margins, business. He was no animal. He was just one of the rare breed of men who were born unafraid to wield violence as the efficient tool that it was. A soft, aching warmth filled his chest as he remembered the outrageous, romantic times he had shared with Janine. The way she looked coming out of the Gulf with the water sluicing off her tan, incredible body. The bullhorn outside the bathroom was a classic. The cut-your-throat creases she used to iron into his uniform shirts. No question, of all his dead wives, she was by far his favorite. Heading down a slightly sloping street toward Grand Central, Peter shook his head sadly at his runaway wife. "Oh, mermaid, we had ourselves sometimes, didn't we?" he whispered, keeping his eyes centered on the back of her fancy ivory spring coat. "What a shame." Chapter 67. I was only mildly melting down by the time I came off Vanderbilt into Grand Central. I'd managed to stop crying at least by the time I hit the west marble staircase above the main concourse. It never failed to amaze. Cream-colored marble everywhere, the famous tsunami-sized windows, the constellation mural on the massive green ceiling. Walking through its old-world elegance in my business clothes, I always felt instantly classy, a true New Yorker. I'd often pretend I was in an old movie, Eva Marie Saint in North by Northwest. 30 seconds later, I was across the massive cathedral-like space in the long corridor that led toward Lexington Avenue. The mall was lined with businesses. I passed a jewelry store, a boutique, a shoeshine stand, a Starbucks. I dodged all the way to the left as a fresh batch of people started spilling into the corridor and up the stairway that connected to the Lexington Avenue subway lines. But not far enough, apparently. I winced in pain as some Wall Street jackass in a pinstripe suit rushing past stepped on my right foot. My toes felt severed. I stopped against the wall in the crowded passageway and slipped off my open-toe pump to count my toenails. "Excuse you," I yelled, pissed and in pain. But I suddenly wasn't angry anymore. The pain in my foot faded, instantly forgotten. At the mouth of the swirling corridor was a tall man. He was handsome and had short, salt and pepper hair and blue eyes. He stood like a rock in the stream of the crowd, and he was staring at me. I ripped my eyes away and stuffed my foot back into my shoe. Hobbled and blind with fear, I pointed myself forward toward the exit and broke into a full-out finish line sprint. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be. But it was. Peter had found me at last. Chapter 68. Shit, Peter thought, flattening himself against the wall next to a payphone. He'd been following too close. Janine had stopped. She'd looked back. Had she seen him? was hard to tell with the trillion people march going on in the passageway between them. It was a definite possibility. He could have whipped himself. The last thing Janine would have been expecting after all this time was a visit from him. The element of surprise was critical, but he'd crowded her and blown the whole thing. What the hell had gotten into him? What happened to that cold patience and reserve he was so proud of? Too late to cry about it. He needed to move. He counted to 3 and then chanced to look back up the wide concourse. He thought she might have headed down the subway entrance on the right, but then he thought he caught a flash of ivory going out through the distant exit door. What the... She was leaving, he thought, as he started to run. She'd only cut through the station, so she wasn't getting on a train. Yo, slow down, someone scolded him. Peter turned. In the doorway of a camera store was an NYPD cop, decked out in full anti-terrorist gear, bomb vest, M16. There was a no-nonsense expression on his face as he looked Peter over. He didn't need that kind of scrutiny, not now. Instead of giving the cop the finger like he wanted, Peter slowed immediately, nodding to his fellow peace officer with an apologetic wave. He squinted when he came out onto bright Lexington Avenue. He looked up and down the block, across the wide street, clouded with delivery trucks and buses and yellow taxis. He looked up at the Chrysler Building right in front of him now. There was no white jacket in either direction. Audrey Hepburn had left the damn building. Nothing. He'd taken his eyes off her for 5 seconds. That was the problem with this rat race city, he thought, infuriated. Too many damn holes for the rats to hide in. She must have seen him. Janine had disappeared. Chapter 69. That didn't just happen. Inside the wall-to-wall crowded Grand Central Starbucks, I stood at the milk and sugar stand by the window. Bathed in sweat, I tried to keep myself from hyperventilating. Peter? Here? Now? How is that possible? I didn't know. I was having trouble breathing, let alone thinking. When I wasn't looking out over Lexington Avenue, I had my head craned around at the shop's side window and side door, which opened onto the train station's corridor. If Peter came in, my plan was to run screaming through the door back into the train station main concourse and try to flag down one of the many anti-terror cops. I shivered like a cornered rabbit. I hadn't even gotten down to Key West, and already I was playing a game of hide and seek with my life as the prize. Maybe I was just being paranoid, I thought, scanning the passing faces beyond the plate glass window. Couldn't it have been somebody who just looked like Peter? I was heading down to Key West now, after all. Peter was certainly at the forefront of my mind, not to mention embedded in my subconscious. Maybe my overstressed brain had jumped to the wrong conclusion. Then again, maybe not. I needed to act. I looked across Lexington. I could actually see my town car, idling outside my office building. I quickly fumbled open my bag. I took out the card that the driver, a very pleasant West Indian man, who called himself Mr. Ken, had given me. Hi, Mr. Ken, I said. This is Nina Bloom. Were you able to get my package from my office? It's right here in the front seat beside me, he said. Great. Do you see the Starbucks on the west side of Lex in front of you? I'm right here by the window. Would you come over and get me? On my way, he said. Thanks, Mr. Ken, I said to him in person when I bolted across the sidewalk and dove into the car 10 seconds later. And thank goodness for cell phones, I thought. I locked the door before I scrunched down low in the seat. Mr. Ken raised an eyebrow at me in the rearview mirror. "Did you forget your coffee, Ms. Bloom?" he said in his lilting accent. "Oh, I already drank it, thanks," I lied, glancing out the window, panicked. "If we could head out to JFK now, Mr. Ken, that would be really great." I scrunched down even farther in the seat. I didn't breathe again until Mr. Ken hit the gas. Chapter 70. On the corner of 42nd Street and Lexington, Peter stood scanning faces. He looked frantically up the unbelievably crowded street in front of Grand Central. Nothing. No Ivory Jacket. Not across the street or anywhere. He'd screwed up. His rat had found her hole. What a bust! He'd had her, and then he'd lost her again. As he stood there fuming, a memory bubbled up. It was of his first and only bow hunting trip with his dad in New Hampshire when he was 7. He was in the forest taking a leak when an enormous black bear appeared 10 feet in front of him. Before he could yell out, there was a thwop from his dad's compound bow, and the shaft of an arrow popped out of one of the bear's eyes. The animal dropped like a tipped-over piece of furniture. His father climbed down from the blind and knelt over the fallen monster, inhaling loudly as he wafted the blood aroma into his face like a chef over a pot. Peter had almost wet himself when his dad suddenly grabbed him and shoved his face down toward the blood-spattered bear until they were nose to black and bloody nose. "This life, you either get the bear," the crazy drunken bastard had said in his French-Canadian accent, "or the bear gets you. Your choice, yes?" Exactly, Peter thought. At least he knew Janine lived in New York City, knew that she worked somewhere around here. Hell, knowing that she was still alive was enough. Catching up with her wasn't an if anymore, it was a when. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen. His wife, Vicky. Horns honked as he stared up at the endless windows, his rage cooling now, replaced by his hunter's natural cold patience. "Don't worry, I'm going to get that bear somehow, Pop," Peter said as he lifted his phone. "Always have, always will."